All right. Good evening, class. I am back to teach a lesson based on your packet in regards to ELA. So let me pull up my slide for today. From my understanding, there's been some confusion about the schedule in which we will be hosting Zooms. So I want to clear that up while you are viewing this YouTube video. YouTube videos will be posted Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Again, YouTube videos that basically have your lessons that correspond with your packets will be posted on my YouTube channel, in which I have sent out the link to you all through Remind. They will be posted Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, covering the following. On Mondays, I will do a math and ELA lesson. On Tuesday, I will focus on ELA. On Wednesday, I will focus on ELA and science. On Thursday, we will focus on, I'm sorry, let me look at my schedule here to make sure. Yes, on Thursday, we will focus on social studies or core knowledge material and ELA as well. I spanned out ELA for Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays because ELA is more intense. It's more material to cover. So I kind of stretched that out over the course of time. Now on Fridays is when we do our live Zoom, in which we all chime in at 2:30, from 2:30 to 3:30. And we get to check in, ask questions, get understanding, and just kind of, chat a little bit about how our week has gone and check in with each other. So I'm reserving Fridays from 2:30 to 3:30, every single Friday, for a live meeting. Mondays through Thursdays, you can get the recording of my lessons on my on my YouTube channel. I did it this way because I know a lot of parents are having to Zoom with other students. I myself have homeschooling to do with my two children, in which they have Zoom sessions that we have to check in with as well with their teachers. I figured it would be easier and more convenient to make myself readily available, that if you need to Zoom with me daily, we can arrange that with your individual student, which will give you, honestly, more one-on-one time where I can work with your student as like a personal kind of tutor kind of thing, in which we can go over things that your student may be struggling with, as opposed to doing a class lesson every day with the whole class. I'm putting the lessons and making them available every day. However, you can view them at your convenience, because for some parents, from 12 to 2 may not be convenient because they may have to go to work. Students can't access that their mobile devices at the same time as other students, and a lot of people had different issues with getting into the Zoom software, things like that. And I felt like it would make it a lot more sense for my class and what my class needs, as well as myself, to make it so that you can reach out to me anytime, despite my office hours of 12 to 2, you can reach out to me anytime during the day and set up a meeting in which we can Zoom chat with your student in between 12 to 2, Monday through Friday. Or I'm sorry, Monday through Friday. So all this was spelled out in our last meeting, April 10th, in which we talked about that. And I also made the agenda available so that you would have a copy of those office hours and what our plan was as far as the schedule. So if you have any more questions about that, let me know. Otherwise, this is the schedule in which we're going to follow, because I feel like it's more convenient for my parents as well as myself and our students. Okay, so with that being said, let's move into our lesson. So today's lesson, we're going to focus on part 1 is going to be, this lesson will be in 3 parts. Part 1 is going to be textual evidence. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me note that I realized today is Wednesday, and I'm doing my literacy. I'm posting my literacy. So this week I'm a day behind on my lessons, and that's merely because I just had some delay in getting everything set up. So as I move into it, the scheduling will kind of pan out to where it's on a regular schedule. As far as Monday will be math and Tuesday will be reading. But right now I just had to kind of go with the flow of things until I worked out all the kinks. Okay, so I just wanted to say that. So I am a little off schedule this week. Okay, but next week I should be on schedule, and you will find everything posted on the accurate dates. Okay. All right. So now that that's out the way, part one, we're looking at the actual. These numbers here that you see are the curriculum guide numbers, and this is the standard in which your child is learning. So when you see that on your packet, that is letting you know what's actual standard that this is, okay? And this is kind of what us teachers go off of. So for this particular standard, you're learning, today we're gonna talk about textual evidence and drawing inferences in literature, okay? And this lesson will be in 3 parts, in which I will focus on each part per day. So today we're just focusing on RL 5.1. Tomorrow we will focus on theme and summarizing literature. And finally, we will focus on characters, settings, and events. And again, these are all things your students have learned. This is merely reviewing to keep the material fresh in their minds. We are not teaching any new material, okay? So what are these actual standards? Let me blow this up a little bit so you can see it. So the first standard, which is part 1 of what we're working on today, drawing an inference in literature and using that textual evidence to do that. It is when you quote accurately from a text, when explaining what the text says explicitly, and when drawing inferences from the text. So I know that sounds kind of wordy and confusing, but it's basically when you are using the exact information from what you read, putting the pieces of the puzzle together so that you can understand something bigger about that text, or you can understand, you can go beyond what the author has stated and make connections and understand the bigger picture, or make predictions on what based on the author's clues on what is actually going to happen, or what could happen, or what is happening. Okay, and we'll go further into that now. So there is some vocabulary that we have to understand when we're going into learning this particular skill in literature. And those vocabulary words are words like explicit. Well, what does that mean? Implicit. What does that mean? Cite, inferences. All these are the focus words around this particular standard, or this particular skill that your students are learning. I'm talking like I'm talking to the parents, but I'm talking to the students as well. All right. So now when we talk about quoting something, or explicit versus implicit, or making inferences, what does all of this exactly mean? So I posted here 2 anchor charts, in which, again, this is something that we have talked about in class, if you remember. And feel free to pause this video, or take a minute to just read these notes. I'm going to read them, but you can also, my students are very aware that when anchor charts go up, pencils also go up, meaning that they are ready to write. So you guys, if you have your pencil and paper or a notebook that you're using for your notes, it is wise to always take notes so you can have a reference. You guys don't expect to remember all this stuff in one sitting. Write it down so you can have a reference to go back and remember and recall what those skills are and what you need to know in order to answer certain questions, okay? All right, so explicit. Explicit means questions or evidence you can find directly in the text. And you can see there as example, it says explicit equals explain, meaning that it is direct. It is right there in plain sight. The author states it. You don't have to necessarily make predictions. You don't have to guess or think further about what the author is saying, because the author is being direct and is stating exactly what the setting is stating exactly what the what the character is feeling. You don't have to base it off of clues. It's stating it exactly, okay? Implicit then would be the opposite, okay? I always tell my students, or you guys remember me always saying, the language, the truth is in the language. We must understand the language in order to understand what these words mean. And X, and breaking it down, meaning, I'm sorry, not X, but M means not, okay? So when we're talking about implicit, is not stated, okay? All right, questions you have to infer. You have to make an educated guess. You have to put the pieces of the puzzle together based on the clues that the author is giving you to be able to understand more about what you're reading, okay? So now, how do we find how to provide text evidence? How do we find text evidence? Well, we answer questions using our prior knowledge, and we make inferences, okay? We also cite the evidence in the text to support your thoughts or opinion. I always tell my students, you got to prove it to me, right? Evidence means proof. You have to prove to me what you know. Where did you find it at? Where in the text did you get that from? That makes you so sure your answer is right. So that is a very important thing when it comes down to being able to make these inferences using information from the text, because you have to go back and find the evidence or the clues that allow you to put these inferences together in your mind. And then you explain your answer with evidence by paraphrasing or directly quoting. So you have to go in the text and find, oh, it states right here that the dog was vicious, so that's why the girl got bit, okay? Sorry, I make things up off my, off the top of my head sometimes, so it sounds pretty random. Y'all know how I am. All right, so now when we're talking about making inferences now, we understand that there's information in the text that is directly stated, and we understand that there's information in the text that the author doesn't directly state. So when the author is in a situation, or when you're reading a story or a passage in which the author doesn't directly state things, then that's when you come in with making your inferences, right? So now, when you make an inference, you go beyond the author's words and you understand what is not said in the text. You think about some things. You think about what the character's actions are. You think about how the character is feeling or dealing with things. Let me make this bigger. Okay. You think about the setting and why is this setting important and how does that kind of play a role on the overall events in the story. You think about the plot and why certain events take place. You think about the character's features and their personality traits and how they're dealing with things. You think about what the character says, right? And then you think about your own personal experiences and how you make those connections with this. How does this build on to your prior knowledge, what you already know? We call that your schema. And if any of you remember that, that is our prior knowledge, what we already know. So we take those clues from the text, right? Those things that the author hints at but doesn't directly say. He says it implicitly, okay? He doesn't directly state it. And then we take our prior knowledge and our schema and we think about all these things that the character is doing and what's happening in the story, and we think about it in relation to our personal experiences. And once we add those two processes together, we're able to make an inference on what the author has not stated. And we're going to go into some examples of that in just a moment. So now, when we're thinking about making an inference, there's certain ways or thinking stems that we can use to state these inferences that we want to make. And some of those go like this. I predict, my guess is, I infer. It could be that maybe, this could mean perhaps. These are all ways that we do this every day. When we see, I use this example with my daughter. When you're walking down the street and a child is running as fast as they can, and you notice that their shoes are untied. Shoelaces swinging everywhere, right? In your mind, you're going to say, this person is running with their shoes untied. I have ran with my shoes untied before, and what happened to me is that I stepped on my shoestring and I fell. So putting together what's happening, what you observed by this person running with no shoes untied, pairing that with what your personal experience was when you ran around with your shoes untied, or maybe seeing someone else or your little brother or sister running around with their shoes untied, you can add those together and make a prediction that this person is probably going to do what? Right, they're probably going to fall. They're probably going to trip on their shoestrings. We make predictions like that every single day. It's kind of human nature to put those pieces together, the clues that we see and what we know, and then to be able to understand more about how to deal with a situation. So we do that just the same in reading. When we're reading and trying to understand further about what the author is really getting at, okay? So here, the links below provides videos for students to view during the lesson. Students must log in to their IReady accounts to access the video. All my students should have their IReady login access account information, in which you can click on the link. It'll prompt you to probably log in which you then will log in. And for most of you, I believe it was your first name underscore or dash, your last name, and then your birthday, if you remember that. If you do not remember or have troubles logging into IReady, please let me know. From my understanding, IReady is not accessible on cell phones. It is on computers and tablets, okay? So you can watch these two videos. Part one of the video is 10 minutes long, and it's just a tutorial on understanding inferencing. And part two, as well, is it continues on with the lesson, and it's about 18 minutes. So when you have time, go through those videos and take a peek, okay? I would not play them today for the sake of time, but you can play them at your own time, or as you're viewing my video, it'll redirect you to that, okay? Actually, I don't think you can actually click on the links from this video. So, let's see, the video is 10 minutes. So let's see if I can click on it. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and play the video just so that to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to see it. And at least I'll play part one, and then we'll move forward with the rest of the lesson. So make sure you pay attention.
Why the long face? It's just that Rocky's my bud, you know? And he's hurt. And I had to take him to this veterinarian I never even met before. You don't know the vet? Ooh, that must make you nervous. Yes, it does. But Dr. Little was the only vet around at the time. Hey, look, I just got an email from Dr. Little. Let's check it out. Dear Jake, it looks like Rocky strained his paw from one too many frisbee jumps. I'm so happy to see that it's not broken. He's going to need to stay with us for a little longer. We're encouraging him to rest so he can get back to running and jumping when the time is right. Thank you for trusting me to take care of such a special friend. I can see why you love this sweet guy. I will do my best to get him healthy again soon. Yours truly, Felice Little. Yes, here's a picture of the rock star pup.
She sounds really caring. I don't think you need to be worried about Rocky.
You know her?
Well, no, but I just have a feeling.
You know, I think it's more than a feeling. You probably don't realize it, but you're making inferences about Dr. Little from her email. An inference is a reasonable guess based on details in the text and on things you already know.
So I made an inference without even knowing it.
Exactly. And I totally agree with what you're inferring. I think she's a kind and caring vet, too.
What's the prob, Jake?
I'm still worried. I mean, Rocky. I guess I'm not sure what you guys are saying.
No worries, bro. Let's take a closer look at the details in Dr. Little's email. Details are pieces of information directly stated in the text. Details in Dr. Little's email are about Rocky, not about Dr. Little. But those same details also gave us some clues about Dr. Little. We used those clues to make an inference that she is caring and kind.
Look at this detail. I will do my best to get him healthy again soon. That detail shows that she really cares about Rocky. It supports my inference that Dr. Little is a kind, caring vet.
I guess so. That does sound like something a vet who cares about her patients would say.
See one more detail in the email that supports the inference that Dr. Little is a caring vet. Can you find it? Click on the highlighted detail that supports the inference that Dr. Little is a caring veterinarian.
Okay, so here it said click on the evidence that she is a caring veterinarian.
Nice. Calling Rocky sweet shows that Dr. Little cares about him. That supports my inference that she's a caring vet.
Details from the text aren't enough to make a difference. You also need to put them together with things you already know.
So true. And in this case, one thing I already know is that most people who became veterinarians really care about animals. Otherwise, they never would have studied for so many years to become a vet. It takes a long time.
That's your background knowledge. Background knowledge is what you already know or understand. To make an inference while you read, you add together the details and your own background knowledge, what you already knew before you started reading. It's just like solving an addition problem. Details from the text plus what I already know equals an inference. Let's try it out. We start with the details from the text. I will do my best to get him healthy again soon. I can see why you love this sweet guy. Then we add our background knowledge, what we already know.
And what we already know is that most people who become veterinarians really care about animals.
Click to add Pepper Jackie's background knowledge to the chart.
What does that equal?
I guess it all adds up to the idea that Dr. Little is a caring vet. That seems like a pretty reasonable inference for us to make.
So there you have it, dude. Dr. Little is a caring vet. It's for real. She is doing everything possible for Rocky. Dr. Little is one thorough vet.
Hey, you just said that Dr. Little is a thorough vet. That's another inference.
I don't get it. Why is that an inference?
Well, it's an inference because the email from Dr. Little did not state directly, I am a thorough vet. Sweet Tea figured it out himself from the details in Dr. Little's email. He used the details as clues.
And I used my own background knowledge, what I already knew before I read the email.
So take me through it again. How did you make that inference?
Check out this detail from Dr. Little's email. He's going to need to stay with us for a little longer. He's keeping Rocky at the hospital to help me with Dr. Little. Well, before I could figure that out, I had to add what I already knew about vets. Okay, let's think about our background knowledge. What do we know about vets that can help us understand why Dr. Little is keeping Rocky at the hospital? Click on the question mark, then pick the best background knowledge to explain why Dr. Little wants Rocky to stay longer at the hospital.
Okay, so because veterans feel sad when their parents leave the hospital. Veterans think their patients are poorly cared for at home. Veterans are too busy to spend much time with their patients. Veterans need to check on their patients as they heal. I agree with that one.
That's it. To know what's going on with the patient, the veterinarian has to check on him as he gets better. That's why Dr. Little wants Rocky to stay longer. Now I've got a detail from the text about Dr. Little. She's keeping Rocky with her a little longer. And I can figure out why Dr. Little is keeping Rocky at the hospital by adding to that detail what I already know. That vets need to check on patients as they heal. Since Dr. Little is keeping Rocky a little longer so that she can check on him as he heals, I can make an inference that Dr. Little is doing everything she can for Rocky. She is a thorough vet.
Sweet Tea's inference makes a lot of sense, Jake. Does it make you feel any better about leaving Rocky with Dr. Little?
A little.
All right, so that was a cute little video there in which kind of walked through some of the material I just went over. So I won't play the other video, but it is also a good idea to watch this video on IReady once you log in. If you have issues logging in, please be sure to reach out to me and let me know so that I can get your students set up on IReady. IReady is a very good tool. You can go to the website, the main website for the school, and also access IReady through their links there. Otherwise, you go to iready.com and it will allow your students to log in and they can do lessons based on everything that is in your packet as well, okay? So moving right along. All right, so similar to what was stated in the video there, using details to support inferences in literary text. We have to do that in order to really understand more about what the author is stating in the text. You will be asked these types of questions on comprehension questions and exams and assessments. And you really, this helps you enjoy reading and understand reading a lot more when you're able to make inferences. So quoting directly from text will help you support inferences about it and better understand the text. So it's important that you can go in and state exactly, as the video showed you there, those evidences that allows you to make these sorts of inferences. In a literary text, the author, make this bigger. In a literary text, the author may state something directly, but authors aren't always direct. Sometimes we must infer what they mean. Making an inference means combining what we read with what we know from our experience. Always support an inference with evidence. You don't want to just say anything based off of no known knowledge. You have to prove what you're saying. So you want to always quote from a text, which makes that stronger, okay? When you quote it from the text, it gives you stronger evidence to support your inference. So let's look at this comment strip below here. In the comment strips, you would be circling anything that helps you infer what the woman thinks about the man's new recipe. So we look at this, right? And we got a man and a woman. Maybe she's hanging out. We'll say she's just a friend. And he's like, oh, I'm gonna cook some dinner for you. She's like, okay. So then he's mixing it up. She's like, what's cooking? And he says, it's a new recipe. Tell me what you think. And she gives it a taste and you could tell by her face there that what? Yeah, maybe she doesn't like it, right? Maybe it's not so great. Oops. Maybe it's not that good. What do you think? If you made a face like that, you probably would think that they're saying it's not a very good taste, right? Or maybe it's too hot. But my guess is that since they're saying it's a new recipe, it didn't turn out so well. Wouldn't you say? So you would look at right here, I just made several inferences myself, but just looking at it, you can see a couple things happening. And so that would come over here and it says, what do you know about making inferences? Use the organizer below to help you develop and support the inference about how the new recipes taste. Okay, so based on a couple things. So what is my evidence in the picture here? Well, her face is all scrunched up. It looks a little sad and discouraged. Yeah. Wouldn't you say? Let's see if I can type that in actually. So we have a man and woman. Tasting man and woman, in which the woman and the woman is tasting his new recipe. Woman face looks disgusting. Oh, let me shrink down my font size a little bit here. Okay. So, woman's face looks disgusting. And man's face looks sad as the woman tastes. Okay, so that is my evidence. I'm looking at this picture and I see both of their faces don't look so happy about this new recipe, about tasting, right? So then I make some connections here. Let's make some connections. So based on my experience, when I taste something that is disgusting, I make we'll just say a big silly face. What has been your experience when you taste disgusting food? I also know that new recipes don't always come out the way we want it to on the first go around, right? On the first time, right? So based on that, the man and woman tasting the food, the new recipe, and the woman's face looked disgusted and the man's face looks a little sad as the woman tastes the food. And when I taste food that's disgusting, I make the same kind of silly face, and new recipes don't always come out right. I can infer that the new recipe must not be as good as he would probably have liked, right? New recipe is not good. Okay? And that's simple as that. When we see things like this happening, we make inferences. When you see photos, you make observations and you understand the evidence and clues, and we piece it together to make an inference. Okay. So now let's go into talking about evidence. And when we're stating our evidence, in response to making inferences off of what we read, here's just some evidence-based terms and they put them in sentences so that you can also understand how we use these terms to support our inferences. The boy was sad because his dog ran away. Now you made an inference, say if you saw a little boy, he looked sad, right? And then you see him walking with a leash, okay? A leash that didn't have a dog attached to it. You can infer that the boy was sad because his dog ran away. So that's how I would state that in a sentence, by using the word because. If that makes sense. Sally loved the ocean. For instance, she moved to a house overlooking the ocean. So there is my inference, Sally loved the ocean. For instance, is me making the connection that she moved to a house overlooking the ocean as my evidence to what I inferred. So that it, for instance, connected those two together, if that makes sense. Let me know if you have questions about that. But these are ways that we can actually answer these sort of questions when we're making inferences. Henry loves whales. Well, how do you know? Well, for example, he often reads stories about them. The term there is for example. So I use that example of him reading stories about whales to infer that he must love whales. Okay. The force of the wind was very strong. I know because the author stated that the wind could shatter a window. According to the text, the purpose of a robot is to do a job. So according to what I read, I can infer that the purpose of a robot is to do a job. From the reading, I know that Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system. You guys struggled with this when I would ask you about using evidence-based terms and or going back in the text and stating where you got that information from. So here is a good example. I would like for you guys to write these down so that you are able to respond to these types of questions using evidence-based terms such as because, for instance, for example, the author stated according to the text and things like that, okay? So make sure you're using those when you're responding to questions. So in your packet, you have a passage called The Visitor, which is kind of a funny little story. I hope you enjoyed it as I did. It was shorter than what it just, to me, it felt undone. I needed to know more. But it was a good story to talk about inferencing. And so I'm going to read this story, and you can follow along from your packet if you like. Some of you may have already done this, and that's quite okay, because now we're looking at it from the perspective of how your instructor, your teacher, Ms. Daniels, is expecting you to really dissect this passage here and understand more about it and why you are giving this to do as an assignment. And that's so that you can learn how to make inferences, okay? So Remember to use your ELA test taking strategies. Most of you have mastered that because we worked on it a lot this year. So making sure we summarize each paragraph so that we understand exactly what we read. Parents, go back and make them say to you, what is it that you just read? What is the main idea? That's very important when we're reading, that we really understand the bigger picture of what we just read. So I'm going to read aloud and you guys can follow along. The visitor. Neil and Edward were sitting in the living room watching the thrilling show on grizzly bears. The show ended, and just as Neil reached for the remote control to turn the television off, zoom! A flying insect flew from above the window. Okay, I apologize, guys. My son was being loud. Let me start from the beginning. Neil and Edward were sitting in the living room watching a thrilling show on grizzly bears. The show ended, and just as Neil reached for the remote control to turn the television off, zoom! A flying insect flew from above the window curtain and landed on the top of the lampshade across the room. Ah! Neil yelled as he jumped up from the couch. Edward's eyes were wide with wonder. Then he was bent over, holding his belly and laughing so hard his eyes welled with tears. What was that? Neil screeched frantically. Edward couldn't stop laughing at him. Gasping for breath, Edward pointed to the lampshade with one hand and clutched his stomach with the other. It's not funny, man, Neil said. That thing tried to attack me. Edward finally got himself together and strolled over to the table where the lamp stood. It's a cricket. It's just an innocent cricket, he said, smiling. A cricket? Neil panicked. I didn't know crickets could fly. He took off one of his shoes and swatted at the lampshade desperately. Of course they can fly. They have wings, don't they? Edward remarked. Yeah, but they're supposed to just hop around, Neil said. The cricket jumped because the cricket jumped before he could hit it. He stooped over and inspected the floor. Crickets and grasshoppers can both fly, Edward responded. They may not fly much, but they do it briefly. They're not very graceful flyers, though. Now he was helping Neil look for the cricket. It may be hiding underneath this table, so let's push the table away from the wall. How about you push and I'll hit the cricket, Neil said. You don't have to kill it, Edward said. I'll catch it and take it outside. He squatted down close to the table and told Neil, go ahead and move the table slowly. Neil moved the table and Edward briskly cupped the cricket in his hands. He walked outside and released the cricket into a thicket of bushes in the front yard. When Edward strolled back into the house, Neil asked, you're going to wash your hands, right? Edward patted Neil on the shoulder and started laughing when Neil squirmed and jerked his shoulder away in disgust. I'm an amateur insect conservationist, Edward declared. No insect will be harmed when I'm around. All right, so take a minute to ask your students what this story is about. What is the main idea? What is the point of the story? What is the summary of this story? Remember to leave out all the details. We don't really want to know every single detail. We just want to know the gist. What is it mostly about? Okay. Now you have a question in your packet. And that question is, according to the passage, how does Neil show that he is frightened by the cricket? what I would like for you to do is cover up, and we've talked about this in class, cover up your options. See, I have this little piece here where I'm covering up my options. Cover up options A, B, C, and D, and see if you can answer this question without seeing the options. Once you reveal your options, then go back and do process of elimination. And students, remember, we have talked about process of elimination a lot, okay? So I'm hoping that you're still practicing that skill and have not forgot that it's important to wean out the two that just don't make sense. They don't pertain to the story. It's just something random there to fill in the space for the option A, B, or C, or D. Then that leaves you with 2 left, right? So now you have given yourself a 50-50 shot at getting it right. So eliminate the 2 that you know don't make sense. And then now you're looking for the best answer out of the 2. You're playing the matching game. You're going back into the text and finding that evidence. So let's go back into the text and find the evidence that would show that Neil was frightened. So to me, right away, when he yelled and jumped from his couch, something frightened him. So that would kind of give me a clue from the author that perhaps he was frightened by something. I thought I was going to be able to highlight it, but I'm not. But anyway, so right here, maybe I will. Let's see if maybe I can put a shape there. Y'all bear with me because I'm still learning this whole how to navigate through things on Zoom. And maybe I can write on it. Annotate. What's that? Aha! Here we go. Okay. So maybe draw a line. So let's see how this looks. Let's see, color, okay. And so right here, oh, look at that, amazing. So I think I'll just underline next time. Let's clear that out, clear all drawing. Let's see, let's just underline it. And, oh, that's bad. I know y'all probably laughing at me right now. There, all right, I did it with my finger that time. Okay, so we have Neil who's jumped out of his couch. That would give me a clue that perhaps he's a little bit frightened by something, right? Can you take a minute to find another one, another clue in the text that would tell me that perhaps he's frightened? How about he screeched frantically? He screeched frantically. What was that? That would indicate that he's frightened. But notice, in all of this, the author did not say that he was frightened. The author implied, it was implicit that he was frightened. That means that he didn't directly say it, okay? Neil panicked. A cricket? That thing tried to attack me, right? Also, him perhaps trying to kill the cricket. Where is it where he tried to kill it? And I'll hit the cricket. See? Usually when you try to kill a cricket, that means you're scared of it, right? Otherwise, you would let it hop on its merry way. Unless you're just probably a pretty evil person that just feels the need to kill bugs. All right, so those are all some different clues that tell us that we can infer that he perhaps might be scared, right? So now let's go back. Let's get out of this. Apparently I have to get out of that, okay. Okay. Oh, that's no good. So it leaves the lines there. All right. So now let's take a look at our chart here. So our evidence was he screeched frantically. Neil screeched frantically. What else did we say? He jumped from the couch. Neil yelled and jumped from the couch. That thing tried to attack me. Neil thought the cricket tried to attack him. Neil tried to kill the cricket. Okay. So, have any of you ever came encounter with a bug or a spider or a cricket that flew inside of your room or house or inside your car or something, right? Have you ever been scared of a bug? So bugs are sometimes scary. Lots of people are scared of flying bugs at that. When people are scared of a bug, they sometimes try to kill it. Right? These are all personal experiences and knowledge that I know of, and based on my personal experience and based on things that I have knowledge of in my own life, right? Or research. So now I can infer that Neil must have been scared of the cricket. So now let's go back to our question. It says, according to the passage, how does Neil show that he is frightened by the cricket? So now I've already broken down and pretty much answered that question, right? Without even looking at my options. Now let's see, and this is a skill we practice in class, going through and breaking down the question and answering it ourselves without really looking at the options, because sometimes the option can be misleading. It can throw you off track. So if you go and practice the skill of going back and finding that evidence in the text, you'll find that it'd be a lot easier to come back and look, then reveal what your options are and see if any of those options match what you already know or already have discovered. Neil thinks that crickets can only jump. Does that make sense? Nah. Let's get that out of here. Because it doesn't say anything about what he thinks about crickets and that they can only jump. Well, he does. I'm sorry. It does say that, but it doesn't say that in pertaining to why he's scared of them, right? So what's the next one? B. Neil searches the room for the cricket. He does search the room for the cricket, but does that show that he's frightened? Maybe, because he's trying to kill it. So we'll hold on to that one. We'll put a star in and say that's my star. Sorry. It's not a very pretty star. Neil screams and jumps when the cricket appears. So let's look at our notes over here. It's gonna have a line through it. Neil yelled and jumped from the couch. Okay. So based on what my evidence was as to why I thought he was scared, that makes sense. He jumped and screamed when the cricket appeared. So we're going to put a star beside that one as well. So we're going to put a star beside that as well. That's my star. Neil pushes the table away from the wall. What does that have to do with anything, right? Nothing. That has nothing to do with him being scared. Yeah, he pushed the table from the wall, but it was only to be able to kill the cricket, okay? So now I have eliminated the two that I know don't make any sense, right? That don't pertain to anything about him being frightened, right? So now it gives me a 50-50 chance of getting it right, okay? A 50 chance, that means it could either be B or C, okay? A 50% chance of getting it right. So now I think about what makes the most sense. Neil searches the room for the cricket. Does that say that he's scared? No, it means he's searching the room to try to find it, but that doesn't give us, that doesn't show us that he's scared, right? So then that leaves us with what? C. Neil screams and jumps when the cricket appears. All right. So again, we've learned a couple of skills here. We went over and reviewed about how to do process of elimination. We've talked about a little bit about how it's important to summarize our passages when we read it. We've also discussed skills on how to break down passages in a way that we cite our evidence. We use our prior knowledge to make inferences to understand more about what the author has not said in the text, but has only hinted at or gave us clues about. And we've learned also what it means to cite that evidence and how we go about citing that evidence and what kind of words and things that we use in order to do that. Okay, so I would advise you go to IReady and watch those videos pertaining to this particular standard, RL51. If you have questions again about your IReady login, please reach out to me using Remind. I can provide those for you on a per request, your request for them. Most of the students know them, so if you don't request them, I will assume that you know them, but I would really highly recommend parents going to IReady, or students who are listening, go to IReady. Go to your IReady. When you feel like you have done everything and you feel like you're a little bit of ahead, I think, Karan, you were one of those that felt like you were a little ahead on the package. Log on to your IReady and work on some of those assignments that can also help push you to that next level, okay? And if you have any questions for me, please, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Until next time, I love you guys, miss you guys, and I'll see you on Friday.